Days after India and China reached a border patrolling agreement, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the Chinese President Xi Jinping held their first bilateral meeting in 5 years. The meeting took place on the sidelines of the BRICS summit in the Russian city of Kazan. What was interesting is that both Prime Minister Modi and the Chinese President Xi Jinping highlighted the role of the special representatives from both sides for the critical role that they played in achieving this breakthrough. I'm talking about India's National Security Advisor Ajit Doval and the Chinese Foreign Minister Wang. They have been lauded for their role and instructed to meet soon to take the talks forward. Here are the key takeaways. The much anticipated meeting between Prime Minister Modi and the Chinese President Xi Jinping on Wednesday followed a major border patrolling agreement between the two sides, who were locked in a military standoff since 2020. And during the meeting, Prime Minister Modi welcomed the India-China border patrolling agreement, and Xi Jinping called for both nations to enhance communication and cooperation. Prime Minister Modi also told the Chinese president that maintaining peace and stability on the border frontier should be a priority for the two sides.
सीमा पार पिछले 4 वर्षों में उत्पन्न हुए मुद्दों पर बनी सहमति का हम स्वागत करते हैं। सीमा पर शांति और स्थिरता बनाए रखना हमारी प्राथमिकता रहनी चाहिए। म्यूचुअल ट्रस्ट, म्यूचुअल रिस्पेक्ट और म्यूचुअल सेंसिटिविटी हमारे संबंधों का आधार बने रहना चाहिए।
In an official statement issued by China, Xi Jinping in the meeting urged both countries to correctly grasp the historical trends in their relationship. He noted that enhancing collaboration and addressing differences would serve the fundamental interests of both nations and their people. The Chinese president also highlighted the importance of India and China working together to promote a multipolar world and democratize international relations. Remember, relations between the two sides had been strained since the 2020 clash between the troops in Ladakh. The two countries increased military presence along the icy frontier since. Just for context here, Prime Minister Modi and the Chinese President Xi Jinping had not held formal bilateral talks since, although they both participated in multilateral events. Their last summit talks were held in October 2019 in the southern Indian town of Mamallapuram. In November 2022, the two spoke briefly on the sidelines of the G20 summit in Bali and exchanged courtesies. In August 2023, they spoke again on the sidelines of the BRICS summit in Johannesburg, but ended up releasing different versions of the conversation, indicating the two sides did not see eye to eye. And the following month, Xi Jinping skipped the G20 summit hosted by New Delhi, a decision that was seen as a setback to ties. Cut to 2024. Diplomatic efforts gained momentum in recent months after the foreign ministers of the two countries met in July and agreed to step up talks to ease the border tensions. The border patrolling agreement, a major breakthrough, came 4 years after the clash, signaling de-escalation in a region that has been tense for quite some time.
Prime Minister Modi underscored the importance of not allowing differences on boundary-related matters to disturb peace and tranquility on our borders. And in this context, the two leaders noted that the special representatives on the India-China boundary question have a critical role to play in the resolution of the boundary question and for the maintenance of peace and tranquility in the border areas.
And as it stands right now, the two leaders have agreed that the special representatives, India's Ajit Doval and China's Wang, will be meeting to discuss the India-China boundary question at an early date. They will meet to oversee the management of peace and tranquility in the border areas and to explore a fair, reasonable and mutually acceptable solution to the boundary question. It's noteworthy that the two leaders especially credited the two representatives for the role in the border breakthrough. After all, the breakthrough came after 17 diplomatic meetings and 21 rounds of military dialogue. The disengagement agreement will facilitate the Indian military to resume patrolling up to their old stations in Depsang and Demchok, the two major friction points that were left to be settled between the two countries. The disagreements have already been sorted in Gogra Hot Springs, Pangong Lake and Galwan Valley. India has been maintaining that its ties with China cannot be normal unless there is peace in the border areas. Sure, Prime Minister Modi and Xi Jinping crossed paths in the last 4 years, but no bilateral talks discussing trade, economic and other factors happened during that time. In fact, we asked national security analyst and author Nitin Gokhale about this. Now that an agreement to ease tensions at the border has been agreed on, and with the two leaders holding that bilateral meeting today, will things change? I asked Nitin Gokhale for his assessment. I asked him, will trade, economic and people-to-people ties return to normalcy, and where does the relationship stand right now? Here's what he had to say.
As of now, it's half a step towards restoring or bridging the deficit gaps between India and China. But this is, like I said, half a step was taken on the border resolution of the two thorny issues at Depsang and Demchok, where disengagement has taken place. The next half step is to direct the SR level talks to resume immediately or as soon as possible. And the third is that the low-hanging fruits, like say people-to-people contacts, more visas for technicians from China, more Indian students probably going to China, resumption of the Mansarovar Yatra in the summer of 2025 could be some of these things that will happen. But let me reiterate that currently the relationship is tense, but under control, is something that one can describe the current status of the India-China relationship.
And my colleague Siddhant Sibal has been tracking those developments very closely on the ground in Kazan, in Russia. Let's go straight across to him to find out more. Hi, Siddhant. What a day this has been. That crucial meeting that has taken place between the Indian Prime Minister and the Chinese President, the much anticipated meeting. We will talk about what the implications are and what happens from here onwards. Let's just take a step back for now and talk about how things really reached this point. What went on behind the scenes to make that meeting possible in the first place?
Well, there were conversations ahead of this big bilateral meeting. The Indian NSA, Ajit Doval, and the Chinese Foreign Minister met on the sidelines of the BRICS NSA meeting in St. Petersburg. And the thaw was something that was being planned. Now, essentially, if we talk about the mood on the ground, a lot of optimism. WION was present in that briefing room when the Indian Foreign Secretary was briefing. And essentially, a lot of positive sentiment being expressed from the Indian side. And of course, if you look at the Chinese readouts as well, the biggest takeaway remains the restarting of the SR level talks. We need to understand what are the SR level talks. These are special representative level talks. This was the brainchild of Atal Bihari Vajpayee and was initiated during his prime ministership in 2003. It was happening on a regular basis, and the last such meeting happened in December of 2019. The relationship after that went downhill after the Galwan incident, and now of course both sides have announced that these talks will happen, led by Indian NSA Ajit Doval and the Chinese Foreign Minister Wang. And basically the focus is on resolution of the border issue, and we do expect a meeting happening very, very soon. All in all, the focus remains on strategic communication, also on low-hanging fruits, as you have already pointed out, in terms of resumption of the Kailash Mansarovar Yatra. This is something of a huge leap of faith for the Hindu pilgrims, and it was suspended after the COVID pandemic. It looks like that these few steps will be first to be taken when it comes to normalization of India-China relationship.
Right, Siddhant, as someone who's been there in Kazan over the last few days, closely monitoring the discussions and the reactions that you have been getting in, what is your assessment of where the relationship stands right now and what happens immediately from here onwards, and how things would change following this meeting?
Well, if we talk about the India-China relationship, this is a relationship which is looking forward to normalcy. I'm here in Kazan and a lot of optimism regarding the bilateral meeting. In fact, the Indian Foreign Secretary thanked Russia for giving the venue. And of course, it will be seen as a big win for Russian diplomacy that two large Asian economies who were at loggerheads with each other are meeting here in the Russian city of Kazan, which is known as the third capital of Russia. And essentially, both are good partners of Russia as well. But all in all, the platform, of course, being provided on the sidelines of the BRICS groupings meeting. And BRICS has been a kind of a group which has provided India and China that breakthroughs in the past as well. We know that last year at the South Africa BRICS summit, both the Indian Prime Minister and the Chinese President had a brief conversation. We saw those visuals. And Xiamen summit, which happened in 2017, was the summit that essentially came about at a time when both sides resolved the Doklam crisis. So whether it's Doklam in 2017, the BRICS summit, or whether it is the Galwan incident, the resolution of it in 2024 at the Kazan summit, BRICS, of course, will be remembered, Kazan will be remembered, and above all, the Kazan thaw between India and China will be remembered.
Indeed, and this meeting will definitely be remembered. Thanks for that, Siddhant. We're, of course, coming back to you as and when we find out more, leaving it there for the moment. To stay up to speed with the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.